Welcome back to MMA Al Dente. I'm here to talk about Anton Turkalj versus Tyson Pedro. Pedro is 9-4 as a pro, 31 years old, and he's given up 1 inch of height but has 1 inch of reach over 27-year-old Anton Turkalj, who is 8-2 as a pro. Turkalj's got 7 finishes, 5 via TKO, 2 via submission, and 1 decision. The TKOs, he's got 1 that was a standing knockout, but at least another one that I saw was elbows. He's definitely better on the ground, and I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of his TKOs come on the ground. He does have 1 knockout, like I said. It's a spinning back fist in 13 seconds, so you know that can be done. He knocked out this guy Soldatov. But the guy we've seen in the UFC, even if it's been in 2 defeats, that's the guy that Anton Turkalj is. He's a grappler. I mean, hopefully he's not the guy that fought Jailton Almeida, because that really didn't go his way. But in the other fight against Vitor Petrino, his other loss, he lost it definitely, and largely due to conceding top position more often. Vitor Petrino was maybe an underrated grappler coming into that fight, but definitely had physicality on his side and was able to outpoint Turkalj, largely with top position and out-scrambling him. But Turkalj still fared well in that fight. Thought he took the second round. I thought he was very much in the whole fight. But here he's got to get his first victory, and he's doing it against a UFC veteran. Even if Tyson Pedro doesn't have the greatest UFC wins, although he's got some good wins earlier in his career, but as of late, not the best wins, and maybe his worst loss coming to Modestas Bukauskas. So this matchup makes sense, and there's a reason why it's even on paper. Turkalj does have the 1 submission loss to Jailton Almeida, who is just a monster and might be the heavyweight champion of the world one day. That's an incredibly rough debut, and I think he took that on short notice and at a catch weight as well. So whatever, there were other circumstances, but in my opinion, the excuses end with Jailton Almeida. Yeah, enough said. But he was also submitted as an amateur, I should mention, with a triangle choke in round 1. I didn't see it, but I just wanted to let you know I'm aware it happened. And I'm also aware that he avenged that with a rear naked choke a year later. So there's that. But yeah, he's definitely a guy that has to prove himself here. And I think he is fighting a guy in Tyson Pedro who has a good name. I think he's been a co-main event, at the very least, for the UFC. But he's a guy who hasn't had a good win in a long time, Tyson Pedro. He's had 2 wins since he returned to the UFC from a 4-year layoff, and they were against Ike Villanueva and Harry Hunsucker. So, good enough fighters to make it to the UFC, but not good enough to brag about, really, as victories go, for a guy that's supposed to be a really good fighter. Pedro has 9 wins, all 9 are via finish, 4 via TKO, 5 via submission. And again, we've seen plenty of finishes in the UFC, most impressive of which comes against Paul Craig, in my opinion. And he TKO'd Paul Craig, but he didn't do it on the feet. He did it on the ground. He went through him with grappling, pretty much. But he hurt Paul Craig and ended up putting him away with the crucifix, elbows from the crucifix. And also, he put away Khalil Roundtree. How can you forget about Khalil Roundtree? Khalil Roundtree dropped him. But Tyson Pedro took him down, ground and pounded him, and rear naked choked him shortly thereafter. So that's a win that, even though it wasn't so impressive at the time, it's gotten a little better with age, I'd say. And that brings me to his losses. He's lost 4 times. Once via knockout, once via submission, 2 via decision. All in the UFC. Shogun knocked him out. It was round 3. And it was 1 punch that really cracked him, and then he put him away, but he injured his knee in that fight. He definitely injured his knee. I don't know when. And Shogun was winning round 2 anyway, drowning him once he took his back. But still, Tyson Pedro was fucked up there. And yeah, it didn't help once Shogun punched him in the head early in round 3. His submission loss comes to OSP, Ovince St. Preux. OSP was hurt in that fight. I believe a right high kick stunned OSP from Tyson Pedro, but Tyson Pedro couldn't put him away. He got on top of him, wasn't able to do much. OSP reversed it, and once he was on top, OSP pretty much hit him with a straight armbar relatively quickly. OSP is not the best submission artist out there, but he is really crafty. He's a better submission artist than he is a grappler, first and foremost, and he's particularly deadly on top, especially from side control. So that's what happened there. Little forgiveness because OSP is underrated in that regard. And his 2 decision losses come to Ilir Latifi, who out-wrestled him. And Pedro was handling the wrestling early on pretty well, spinning the north-south control from the bottom, and then getting his hips free and escaping. But then towards the end, Ilir Latifi started stuffing his guard and keeping his shoulders flat, and he ended up winning a decision. Modestas Bukauskas, that was his most recent loss. Tyson Pedro did not look great there. Wasn't able to make much happen on the feet or on the ground when he had any opportunities. And then down the stretch, it was Modestas Bukauskas pulling away with volume and activity and speed. And yeah, he definitely won that fight. But Tyson Pedro, he's only been defeated on the ground really twice. OSP, who submitted him, had being heavily on top, and Ilir Latifi, who is a fucking bowling ball. That's just physically, Anton Turkalj can't duplicate the Ilir Latifi performance because he's not a bowling ball. I think if Anton Turkalj does get on top of Tyson Pedro, the fight isn't over. Even though Turkalj's really good on top, I think it's still going to be a back-and-forth fight. A couple of reversals, kind of like the Vitor Petrino fight. I think it'll be more of an active grappling match. And in the end, I think on the feet, Tyson Pedro will have an advantage there. He's got to watch out for the wild strikes of Anton Turkalj. And Anton Turkalj has never been knocked out, so it's not like Tyson's going to go through him on the feet. But Tyson has better overall strike, and in particular, better kicks. And when push comes to shove, and it does here because it's a very close fight, he's got the hometown crowd as well. So I'm taking Tyson Pedro to win. I think he'll have physicality on his side. Even though he's never won a decision, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he won a decision here against Anton Turkalj. So I threw a sprinkle on that because it's at plus 600. But in general, my only pick is the Tyson Pedro money line at minus 110. My heart's not totally into it, so I didn't bet too heavily on it. But it is the pick. I think he's going to have physicality on his side on the ground, power on the feet, and the crowd, at his sails, so to speak. So, Tyson Pedro. Like, share, subscribe, all that horse shit. Check out my other videos.